Y'all good?
Everyone ready?
Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please, Ms. Ford.
Chairman McClendon.
Here.
Vice Chair Robinson.
Here.
Mrs. Hill. Here. Mrs. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Perez. Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Thurman.
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Here.
Mr. Wingate.
Here.
Mr. Macon.
Here.
Interim Superintendent Dr. Kane. Here.
Thank you for that. Only amendments we have to the agenda tonight are under delegations. We'll add Jamie Hall, Audrey Ramsey, and Reed Uberman. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill. Yes. Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Wingate.
Yes.
Chairman McClendon.
Yes. With that, we'll go into our pledge to the flag and meditation by Ms. Farrow, principal of Eastlake Elementary.
Oh, I didn't turn that one on. On the end. Sorry.
Good evening, I'm Jasmine Farrell, principal of Eastlake Elementary.
And I'm Melissa Caulfield, assistant principal of Eastlake Elementary. Today is November 11th, and I'd like to share with you a statement from Nelson Mandela. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. A veteran, whether active duty, discharged, retired, or reserve, is someone at one point in his life who wrote a blank check made payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including his life. That is honor. I ask you to honor our veterans today by pledging allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For tonight's meditation, I want to speak briefly on the topic of going back to normal. So I think we shouldn't go back to normal because normal just was not good enough. So right now, we are at the cusp of pre-pandemic living. Many people are hopeful to return back to a sense of normalcy. But in light of this possibility, I would like for us to take a moment and reflect on a few things that have been awakened in the last 20 months. Creativity, innovative ideas, strategic problem solving, empathy, prioritization, a strong value of time, and a focus on mental health. Hamilton County Schools have been a shining example of operating outside of the norm. I have become a better leader and a stronger advocate for the Eastlake community by operating outside of the norm. So at this unique time, we should not strive for normalcy. Rather, we should strive to be an anomaly. We should stand out from the rest, be set apart from the crowd that's looking to go back to normal. And rather, we should continue to look for new and innovative ways to push forward for the students of Hamilton County. Thank you.
Move into our exemplars of excellence with our recognition of Blue Ribbon Schools with Dr. Robert Sharp and Dr. Neely Parker.
Good evening, Chairman McClendon, Interim Superintendent Dr. Towns, and members of the board. It is a great honor to stand before you today with Mr. Jeff Paulson to recognize Thrasher Elementary as a National Blue Ribbon School. The National Blue Ribbon Schools program recognizes public and private elementary schools based on their overall academic excellence or their progress in closing the achievement gap. And every year, the United States Department of Education seeks out to celebrate great American schools, demonstrating that all students can achieve at high levels. Just recently in Washington, D.C., Thrasher Elementary was recognized by the United States Department of Education for the excellent work that they've done for students. So, Mr. Paulson, it is my great pleasure to recognize you tonight for being the principal of a national Blue Ribbon school, Thrasher Elementary.
Oh, thank you. I did not prepare anything to say, but I do feel compelled to speak if that's okay. Being Veterans Day, I do want to start off by saying that we are so grateful to live in a country where our veterans have provided a freedom for us that we're in a place where we all can pitch in to provide a public education for every person. And of all of America, I am grateful to be in Tennessee, and of all of Tennessee, to be here in Hamilton County and to be part of Hamilton County Schools. This is the leadership that we've had these last several years has taken, I think, extreme talent in our schools and focused them all in one direction at a target that's about having children thrive where they experience a future without limits. I mean, these are the words that we have at every meeting we start off with. And I know that when it comes to my own school, what I would say as a principal is what every principal will say. But I do want to say, our kids, they work joyfully and they work hard. They give their very best every day, whether it's in relationships with each other or their academics. Our teachers have taken on every challenge head on and been innovative and worked to provide as normal of a experience as possible. And our parents, God bless our parents, what they've had to do in the last 18 months, and they've done it. They've backed us up. They've supported us. They've sought, support from us, and the relationship we've had has grown. It's been amazing. So this is part of that. Out of 1,700 some schools that there are in Tennessee, the state was able to nominate 6. And there are other schools in Hamilton County that met the criteria and could have been nominated. So while I'm proud to celebrate my school, I would like this to be seen as a representation of what Hamilton County School has done. If there's a blue ribbon county, it should be Hamilton County. So I want to thank you all for this and for recognizing the school tonight.
Thank you and congratulations. Next, we'll go into the recognition of the TSSAA AF Bridges Award winners by Dr. Justin Robertson and Mr. Jackson.
Chairman Wingate, our district athletic director is going to present this, but embarrass him for a second and wish him a happy Veterans Day, former United States
Thank you very much, Dr. Robertson. On behalf of the Operations Department and me being the Campus Support Specialist for Hamilton County Schools, I thank the school board, Chairman McClendon, Interim Superintendent Dr. Towns, and Dr. Robertson for allowing me to present these awards today. This award, or the AF Bridges Divisional Awards, are presented by the TSSAA. This award is given in honor of the TSSAA's first executive secretary. Bridges served as an executive secretary from 1946 until 1972. Under his leadership, athletics in the state of Tennessee reached a level of excellence and competence that earned the respect of all people. According to the TSSAA, Bridges was a person of high principles who displayed firmness and fairness, as well as the high ideals of ethics and integrity, as he and many other school people established the foundation of the TSSAA across the state. In total, there are 7 AF Bridges Award winners given out each year to each of the 3 athletic districts across the state of Tennessee. The award is given for the School System Administrator of the Year, Principal of the Year, Athletic Director of the Year, Female Coach of the Year, Male Coach of the Year, and the official and the Contributor of the Year. At this time, we are lucky enough in Hamilton County to have 4 of these distinguished honors. At this time, will the following please come to the podium? Principal of the Year, Steve Henry, who is now retired, but he received this from Soddy Daisy High School. The Athletic Director of the Year, Michael Bumper Reese from Signal Mountain Middle High School. Female Coach of the Year, Miriam Arnold from the Chattanooga School of the Arts and Sciences. And the Contributor of the Year, David Kelman, formerly at East Hamilton High School. And at this time, I'm going to present them with plaques from, and I'll read this, in recognition for your accomplishment in receiving the TSSAA AF Bridges Award for District 3. Hamilton County Schools and the Hamilton County School Board want to thank you for your leadership and commitment to our school system, which this award signifies. Ms. Arnold. And Mr. Kelman, thank you for everything you've done. Thank you very much for allowing me to present these awards. Thank you.
Mr. McClendon, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, Mr. Wingate.
So I wanted to thank all four of you. I know three. Mrs. Arnold, I haven't made your acquaintance yet, but thank you for what you've done. Coach Henry, thank you for your many, many years of service. Soddy Daisy, Bumper, 41. Bumper, thank you for your many years of service at Red Bank and Signal Mountain. And Mr. Kelman, thank you for all that you do for the East Hamilton community that most people do not know. And I know you like it that way, so I'll keep it that way. And also, we need to recognize Mr. Brad Jackson because he was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame last week for his contributions to wrestling. And many, many, many talented folks in Hamilton County Schools, not just in our classrooms, but on our fields, our mats, our courts. Not as lean, not as mean. Always a Marine, that's right. Thank y'all.
Next, we'll move into our presentations by Interim Superintendent Dr. Towns.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So we have the pleasure tonight of updating the board on our Future Ready 2023 plan. And tonight we want to focus in on whole child supports. We've spent the past couple of months really talking about academic press and the things that we're doing around academic achievement, but personalization is also one of the frames that we lean into, particularly around culture of care. So as we always want to start, we really lean into our just cause, that is, all children thrive and experience a future without limits. And we know that thrive is a big word. It goes beyond academic outcomes, and it's really about how are the children doing. Midtown, Dr. Sonia Stewart lifted this up, that if you ask how are the children doing, we want to answer that the children are well. And so this is how we confirm that the children are doing well. Of course, the board, our mission is that we will try to create those pathways to bright futures for all of our children to help them realize their full potential. And we do this around these 5 action areas of the Future Ready 2023 plan. We've talked a lot about how we're going to meet the goals, these Focus 5 performance targets of Future Ready 2023. And even with the disruption of the pandemic, we are still making sure that we're focused on trying to meet these goals over the next couple of years. One of the things we've been elevating is that in order to meet those goals in Future Ready 2023, we've got to focus on all of our children, and particularly our children in the historically underserved groups. And so we've elevated this slide before. When you look at our district, 70% of the tests taken in our district are taken by children who are in one of these accountability subgroups. And the thing that we've noticed is that students who are not in one of those subgroups are performing at 3 times the level as our students in those groups. And so that means to meet our Future Ready 2023 goals, we've got to be able to support those children to high levels of achievement. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by making sure we look at whole child supports. So we're going to focus on 2 areas tonight, and we have a few people here with us to really talk about all the work we've been doing. We'll focus on accelerating student achievement. One of those strategies was closing the opportunity gap, and we really want to give you a deep dive into all the ways that we're doing this and focusing within school on how we integrate those multi-tiered systems of support. And then, of course, we have to connect the school efforts to the community, to families. As we know, we have the children for 20% of the time, but 80% of their time is spent outside of school. So we have to build strong connections to families and communities. So you're going to see that tonight. As we've been working over the last 4 years in Hamilton County, we really have this continuum of integrated student supports that we are going to highlight. And so we've had several strategies that we've been doing in Hamilton County schools, and now we're really scaling up and expanding those strategies to be able to support the whole child in our schools. And so the agenda for tonight, we're going to have some of our leaders talk to you about social and emotional learning and counselors. We're going to really define and talk about this culture of care that we want to create. We're going to talk about the work of our student supports, particularly social workers and truancy specialists. And then we want to highlight our work with Community Forward, our community schools framework. And then finally, we'll talk about the overarching effort of family and community engagement. So with that, I want to hand this off to Ms. Patricia Russell, who is our Director of Social Emotional Learning.
Thank you, Dr. Towns. Good evening, Board Chairman, Mr. McClendon, and to the board members, and again, to our fierce leader and advocate for students, Interim Superintendent Dr. Towns. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about all of the work that's been done to support not just our students' academic success, but their non-academic success as well. So I have the pleasure of being the leader of our Social Emotional Learning Department. Our team is composed of mental health and behavior resources, K-12 school counseling, student success planning, and college and career advisory. In our department, our belief is that we're determined to move from a one-size-fits-all educational approach and to really focus on individualizing success and education for our students. The way that we're doing this work is by using a multi-tiered system of support system. If you notice the model on the left, the multi-tiered system of support system has 3 different tiers. The very first tier is considered to be the universal tier, and it's the tier that 80 to 85% of our students fit into. Now, we all know that all students are not going to reach the goal on tier 1, so we also allow students to receive targeted supports, which is tier 2. It's roughly about 10 to 15% of our students will fit into tier 2. And then that last tier is tier 3, where 3 to 5% of our students will fit into that intensive supports. So keep this 3-tiered model in mind, because you'll hear it as we go throughout our presentation today. We also align with CASEL's framework around social emotional learning, which includes the 5 competencies. You have self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, as well as responsible decision-making skills. These skills are operationalized into the work that we push out and the resources that we provide for our schools. If you notice, we have 4 components in which we support our schools and our students. We focus on classroom practices, school practices, SEL supports for adults, as well as we elevate district supports to go out into our schools and support our principals, our students, our families, as well as others that might need support. One of the strategies that we've highlighted over the last couple of years, or that we've implemented, was a tool called a panorama screener, or we use it as our student well-being measure. At the beginning of the year, when our students enter, it is our goal to assure that we know where they are developmentally and we provide the supports needed in order to elevate them or to help them thrive. So our social emotional learning screener allows us to find out where student development skills are around the 5 competencies. It also helps us to create a safe environment or learning environment for our students. An example of a question that will be on our SEL screener will simply be, how often can our students pull themselves out of a bad mood? As you notice, we have roughly about 36% of our students that can, and 64% that says they don't do so well with that. So we would know that this was an area that we would target for our kids. All of the work that I just described funnels into a bigger system of work that we call student success planning. Now, I know a lot of you are familiar with this. Student success planning, again, gives us an opportunity to assess students and to become aware of their successes as well as their challenges. It also gives us an opportunity to connect them with resources inside as well as outside of the building. And then we take these plans that we create, these individual plans, and we manage them for student success. This work is done by a collective group of individuals. It's often school counselors, social workers, teachers, principals. We all come together and we discuss individual kids. Again, we look at their successes as well as some of their challenges, and we prepare them, we place them or give them interventions as well as preventions that they need to be successful. This is how a plan is built. Again, we take data. We use this data to build a plan around students' academic, social emotional learning, future ready, which is college and career, and then family and health supports. We build a plan for a student. We pair them with interventions, again, as well as provide preventions to help them be successful in the classroom as well as outside of the classroom. So this piece here is really exciting. Within the past few weeks, we've been able to add a student success planning link to our class links, which I'm sure you all are very familiar with. Shannon Moody and her team, along with John Cunningham, which is here today, they've worked really hard to make student success planning accessible to all individuals within our district. On next school year, we're looking to expand student success planning for all K-8 schools. This year, currently, all teachers have access to student success planning through class links, our single sign-on. This is what our platform looks like. It has our components, the academic domains, it has social emotional, the health domain, the family domain. Again, we look at each area for our students, and then we measure and we find out what their successes are, which are the assets, as well as their challenges. And then we provide the individualized support they need to be successful. We have scaled this process over the last this is year 3. We started with 8 schools. We're now up to 22 schools that are implementing student success plans. And I think currently we have roughly about 5,600 plans that's been created for students. I want you to be aware that SSP, or Student Success Planning, is not a program, it's not just a platform, but it is the way that we will do business for students in Hamilton County Schools. Quote Dr. Towns. So I'm going to transition just a bit to talk about a culture of care. You know as well as we know over the last several months, there's been an increase in behavior. And we're really focusing as a district to be proactive while creating a culture of care or a climate of care in every school. I'm going to invite my colleague, Karen Glenn, to come up because we're going to transition in just a second. But this is a picture here of the students at Orchard Knob Middle School. Some of the things that they're doing to create a culture of care is that they're really focusing on peer-to-peer relationships. They're also focusing on, teacher-to-peer relationships while elevating that social emotional learning. One of the things that we do to find out how to create a climate of care or a culture of care is that we go to our data. So this here is the school climate survey. And one of the questions that we just kind of look through to get a feel for where our kids were when it comes to bullying or behavior is we asked, the survey asked students, this school year, how often has someone made fun of you or called you names? As you notice, for our elementary students, 22% said at least once a week. For our secondary students, 13% said at least once a week. Now, we really want those numbers to be 0. So even though that's not a high percentage, we don't want any of our students to be insulted or feel like they're being bullied. Last question before I hand it over. If another student was bullying me, I will report it to a teacher or another adult at the school. Of course, we want all of our students to report. If you notice on the left, you have your pie chart that shows where elementary students indicate being more likely to report bullying than our secondary students. Again, that's something that we want to change because our goal is to create a safe atmosphere for students while they're in our school buildings. Karen Glenn is going to talk to you a little bit more about the bullying report.
Thank you, Patricia. As we focus on maintaining our culture of care, we absolutely want to make sure that our school climate is such that it prevents bullying. So the graph that you see here is some data that we compiled from 2019 through the first quarter of 2021. And the information that you see here reflects the confirmed cases as reported by principals, the disciplinary action that was taken by the administration, and the students that were trained. After dramatic decline in bullying incidences during the pandemic and the return of the pre-COVID levels indicate a need to accelerate student training in peer mediation and move to STAND. So, as Patricia said, all of our schools have a RTI behavior team. And so we're focusing now on reinforcing those positive behaviors and highlighting those so that we can maintain what we need to maintain to help our students to feel safe. And that's going to begin by promoting kindness on World Kindness Day, which is just next week, November the 13th. And that is going to be led by the social emotional learning supports. So as we transition to begin to talk specifically about the school social workers and truancy specialists, we know that unmet needs can prevent students from being present and prepared. And so that's a great segue into the role of our school social workers and our truancy specialists. To more specifically talk about their role, they're both using that multi-tiered system of support. And for the school social workers, they are advancing the district's mission by supporting the mental, physical, and emotional well-being of school-aged students by connecting home, school, and community. With our truancy specialists, they are ensuring that the guardians of school-aged children are adhering to the Tennessee Department of Education attendance mandates. And so the goal there is to prevent, reduce, and intervene with school truancy. So this graph here talks about our attendance and our truancy data. And one of the things I think is really important to highlight here is when we began the first year of implementing the tiered intervention, which was in 2018 and 2019, chronic absenteeism was reduced from 16.3% to 12.6%. Currently, 91% of our school truancy numbers are trending below pre-pandemic totals. So as we think about what the tiered approach looks like for our school social workers and our truancy specialists, Tier 1 for the school social workers is all about education. Everybody in the school needs to know how to access the service, how to send referrals, how to identify a student that is in need of additional support. And so our school social workers are providing that information so that they will know how to do that. As far as the truancy specialists, they are collaborating with the administration in creating an attendance team so that they can effectively pass through or respond to those cases of unexcused absences. For the Tier 2, for the school social workers, they are focusing on facilitating or co-facilitating topic-specific small groups. This can be on grief, it can be on behavior, it can be mental health, or what the situation may dictate. For the truancy specialists, they conduct a needs assessment with each individual family that has been truant so they can determine what the issues are that's causing the absenteeism. At the Tier 3 level, with that individualized support, the social workers will respond to the individual referrals, and in that they may do home visits, or they may connect with homebound services, or educational, medical, or vision services. With the truancy specialists, they will be involved with the Community Attendance Review Board, and this is a board where there is a school social worker, the truancy specialist, along with juvenile court. There's also DCS and some of our service providers, so that we can ask the families, this is what we have provided from the needs assessment, what have we missed? So we have the partners that are right there that they can make that service. So the collaborative support includes data-driven decision with the related stakeholders. The one on the left side are the in-house stakeholders, the administrators and all of the personnel that will help to drive the decisions that's best for the student. The list on the right, those are the community partners that we align with connecting that service. And so at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Caitlin Stewart, who's going to share with us Community Forward.
Thank you, Karen. So we have the privilege of serving 45,000 of the best and brightest students in our district. Despite their resilient and capable nature, we know that they face academic and non-academic barriers to their success. So it is our responsibility and our privilege to equip schools with strong structures and systems that positively impact how our students learn and how they develop. So our vision is to see students and families thriving. We're going to accomplish that by strengthening the connections between students and their families, their schools, and their communities. So Community Forward is our district's framework for the community school model. We focus on 4 different pillars. The first is integrated student supports. The second is enhanced learning opportunities. The third is active family and community engagement. And the fourth is college and career readiness. The function of Community Forward within our district is to create and strengthen partnerships that support our schools in providing wraparound services that align to these 4 areas. We know that our schools maximize operations by focusing on 2 main buckets, the first being academic press and the second being personalization. Academic press refers to all things teaching and learning, and personalization refers to our culture of care. Community Forward schools are going to live on the personalization side of those buckets, and I like to think of Community Forward as a bridge that closes gaps by coordinating specialized services, providing out-of-school enrichment and remediation activities, as well as promoting engagement among all of our stakeholders, specifically our families and our community, and ensuring that our students are prepared for post-secondary opportunities. The partnerships that are being developed support our district's vision of fostering environments that encourage students to thrive and experience a future without limits. Community Forward support teams work collaboratively to assess and identify student needs, as well as to develop interventions that address obstacles to student success. Everyone has a seat at the table, all stakeholders, because all students deserve really strong teams. So Northside Neighborhood House is an organization that has been leading the community school initiative within our district for years. Rachel Gammon and Yang Matthews, I'm sure, are names that you all are familiar with. They are passionate and effective leaders within this work, and it's evident in the relationships that they've built with their stakeholders in the Rock Point and North River communities. So one of the major focuses of Community Forward and student success planning is to really improve the exchange of information between stakeholders. And so the shift to intentional collaboration and the focus on those 4 pillars will allow us to expand the reach and the caliber of the wraparound services that we're providing to our students. I'm going to pass it over to Rachel Emond. She is a member of the FACE department, specializing in community engagement.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how our family and community engagement team partners with community to support student achievement. So first and foremost, we did recently restructure to be able to better serve our parents, schools, and community partners. We pulled our staff up to district level to really be able to focus on these 3 areas, and we'll soon be onboarding a new Family Resource Center facilitator to specifically focus on building the capacity of parents to be stronger partners in their children's education. So over the last 3 years, we have worked with over 150 partners to provide 215 programs that support student success in the district. And we determined this through our district asset mapping project that we worked on with United Way and several other partners as well, but United Way was our primary functional partner throughout this program. So this asset map was developed for support staff in schools to be able to use to better serve families and students as they're connecting them to outside resources in the community. And it's also the process that we relied on to identify the partners we want to bring into that student success planning platform as we work on what that referral and connection process will look like. Moving forward, the FRC facilitator that we're bringing on will be responsible for keeping this map updated so that it's truly a living document for our support staff to be able to use. So now I'll talk a little bit about some specific programs that we've been running. Of course, you all have heard about this program already, but can't forget about it. So since August of 2020, we've connected over 15,000 students to free Wi-Fi services through our partnership with EPB and the Enterprise Center and our outside funding partners. As we continue signing up families for this program, we are partnering with the Enterprise Center to provide grants to staff and schools for their efforts on getting the remaining eligible students signed up. So through that partnership, we'll be able to provide over $60,000 to schools and staff to reward them for the work on this program, which is really exciting. First Day Ready is one of our family and community engagement team's most successful community partnership and integrated supports programs. So this past summer at our Back to School Bash, we were supported by 58 partners to provide 2,800 backpacks full of school supplies to students before the school year started. Through the support of the Creative Discovery Museum, we developed a kindergarten readiness booklet that was district branded, which was really great. We printed 1,000 copies of this, and it included information on the skills that students need to be ready for the first day of kindergarten and then beyond for the first 100 days of school. So those 1,000 copies went to all Hamilton County schools, rising kindergartners in our pre-K programs, and also several of our surrounding pre-K partners as well. And then on our Better Together Day of Service, we brought 87 volunteers together to support 10 projects throughout the district, beautifying campus, different campuses throughout the county to get them ready for the first day of school. Parent University is another program that our team coordinates. So this program offers both on-demand and in-person training this year. We're really excited to get back to in-person training, so we've got a couple coming up on Power School, which is really cool. And our new YouTube channel, which is another new feature of Parent University this year, provides playlists based on learning needs and specifically features 2 new series on family literacy and home literacy skills, and then also on college readiness. Our team works with several community partners to also be able to provide Parent University trainings at school buildings. So we work with partners like the Family Justice Center, Tech Goes Home, and the Urban League, just to name a few, to provide different skills trainings in school buildings. We recently hosted our first ever district-wide family literacy festivals in the Harrison Bay and Missionary Ridge learning communities. So we worked with 10 community partners and several district educators to connect over 150 students to literacy skills and super fun literacy activities through the help of some of the public libraries in the area. We were also able to provide them with healthy meals and community resources like SIEMPA and Signal Centers at these events as well. And we'll be hosting several more of these throughout the year. I think the next couple of years to come, actually, so we've already started working on planning the ones that we'll be hosting next semester. And then just a little bit more about what our Family Resource Center does. So their primary focus is connecting families to systems of support in the community so that they're empowered to be active members in their child's education, but also to be self-sufficient beyond that. One of the things that they worked on recently was working with the United Way to get their 211 access on the ClassLink single sign-on so that all students and staff have direct access to this through that program, which allows for quick and easy confidential access to hundreds of resources in the community. And the next major endeavor for the Family Resource Center as we onboard that new facilitator will be a physical FRC location. And then last but certainly not least, our team collaborates really strongly with our ESL department to serve families through our new International Welcome Center. So this center was launched on September 24th and since has served over 15 families. And these families are specifically newcomers to the country and to the district. And we're very grateful for the work that Diego Trujillo and Carly Richardson have done to be able to serve newcomer families in this way. We hope to have a grand opening with community partners soon, but you can see in some of these pictures they've got great spaces for families and their kids as we welcome them to the district. With that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Towns.
Thank you, Rachel. So I think, unfortunately, Mr. Perez isn't here, but I remember last board meeting, he wondered about, are we paying attention to the joy in learning? Do we make sure that we're concerned about those non-academic needs of kids? And I think you can see from the work that's been highlighted, we've invested a lot of time and resources, and thankfully, because the board has helped us to be able to finance investments around those whole child supports that we have in the district, you're going to continue to see us scale up of all of those avenues. And I think that this is a part of our vision of excellence in terms of making sure that all of our children have the resources that they need to meet those diverse needs across our district. So with that, I open it up for questions or comments.
Any questions or comments?
Where is this Family Resource Center going to be located? Or do we have a location for that yet?
I don't think we have a location. Rachel, we're working through where we might be able to locate it. We're looking for space, and that's someplace that it's got to be, you know, on a public transportation line, all of those things. So we haven't identified it yet.
Anything else?
Mr. McClendon, on the, I'm particularly interested in the parent university. I don't know where she went. Yeah. Just a quick question.
Sure.
If you could get a bunch of parents together, would you guys be willing to come out and meet with those parents? And
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we're definitely looking for more. We engage with our family and community engagement members who are in school buildings, so family partnership specialists and parent volunteer coordinators all the time to figure out what parent university trainings they're looking for and what they need. So like I mentioned, we have several different community partners who can provide really specific stuff. We have educators at the district level who can provide specific trainings for families. But yeah, I mean, if you've got a group of
I'm fixing to
parents,
put you to work.
hey, we'll take it.
Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and it occurs to me how many resources like Parent University the district has created over the years, especially in the last 3, as we've focused on having the community be involved and making sure that we're working with parents. But so many resources that you have to know that they're there to go get them, right? And in the work that I do, I talk to a lot of people who know a whole lot about a lot of stuff that's happening in Chattanooga. And yet, just this week, I had a colleague on the city council say, well, it would be great if you would tell people about this. And I said, well, we do tell people about this, but it's a challenge. So perhaps we need to be contemplating what other communication partners we can link up with. Yeah, I mean, frankly, the fact that, you know, the library has the world at its fingertips, right? But when's the last time I went and found out, you know, what the GDP of Belgium was? Like, I don't know, but it's there, right? So I wonder what radio stations might we be able to partner with? What, you know, where does PBS fit in this conversation? They've been a wonderful community partner to us. Because the more that families know that these things are there, the more impact that they can have. So I appreciate all that you guys are doing, and also the sophistication in particular of the student success planning. I know that what you're building is something unique in the nation, and I think that we will learn a lot, and I know that our colleagues all over the nation will learn a lot as well. Thank you.
Ms. Thurman.
Just have a question. It says that all teachers have access to students' health mental health information? Did somebody say that, make that comment?
It was the student success planning platform, and we do protect particular information. So it's the user access controls. One of the reasons we had to build a customized platform is because we wanted to be able to restrict it in alignment with FERPA. So if I'm a teacher, I can only see students that are in my class, and then I can only see certain information about those students. And then, of course, if you're a social worker and they're a part of your caseload, you get to have more access in terms of seeing what their notes are and who you're trying to connect them with. So it's not their mental health data, it's actually the student success planning platform, which was the screenshot that we showed that just kind of showed strengths and challenges across all the domains. That's what every teacher has access to be able to see, that planning platform.
How do they collect the data?
A variety of ways. I don't know if Ms. Russell, if you want to speak to the process, but some of it is the survey that we do. So students actually tell us what they are thinking about their own well-being and mental health. We ask parents for feedback and information. This year we tried to integrate some of this conversation into parent-teacher conferences at the schools that are in success planning. The academic domain, we actually push all of the information that we have around benchmark data and state assessment data. So that's the neat thing about the platform, is that it brings together a lot of different information about a student to help build that profile and that plan to prioritize action steps.
And that's in their permanent student files?
Most of it is in their permanent student files, like in our student information system. What we're doing is feeding that information from like a Power School platform into the student success platform, so you don't have to go looking multiple different places.
Are parents asked to give their permission to do that?
In terms of the FERPA data, that they have the access, but this is all things that are still in the Power School platform. So it's all we're doing is really repackaging it, but it's not something that is new or different information. We're just making it more accessible for our team.
I'm just not real sure how I feel about that. I'll talk to you more about that later.
We'd be happy to. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to delegations, and I will hand it over to Vice Chair Robinson.
All right, thank you. Okay, looks like we have 5 delegates tonight. I'm going to just go ahead and read this once, but I'll call your name when it's your opportunity to speak. Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I will tell you when you have 1 minute left. And Miss Jeanette O'Markell is our first speaker. Let me get you set up. Okay, feel free to begin.
Thank you. Chairman McClendon, Dr. Townsend, board members, thank you so much. I come to you today with sharing exciting news. The Hamilton County Education Association has been given almost $10,000 in a planning grant from the NEA Foundation to work in partnership with Hamilton County Schools. I've been working with Dr. Drake to write a grant proposal to develop an early career educator support program focused on mentoring, support, and retention of our early career educators, and particularly our educators of color. If awarded, the NEA Foundation grant will provide almost $250,000 a year for 3 years to assist us in developing a program to address the retention challenges faced by Hamilton County schools, and will promote student success by ensuring access to diverse educators. The program will be open to all 1st through 5th year educators in Hamilton County schools. The planning stage includes focus groups of administrators, educators, college students in educator prep programs, and students in our Future Ready Education Prep program. We have 1,200 educators in years 1 through 5 in Hamilton County. This is a high percentage. Studies indicate that many educators leave the profession during these early years. We have a significant need to provide support and professional development to new educators to promote the retention and increase the overall experience level of our workforce. The need for this support is especially critical with regards to educators of color. In Tennessee, over 36% of students are students of color. Hamilton County Schools percentage is over 50%. However, only 12% of our educators are educators of color. Low levels of educator diversity is problematic for all students. For students, exposure to an educator who looks like them can change the way they experience education. Educators serve as strong role models and raise expectations for learning through relationships with students and their families. Just this week, an educator was asked by one of his students if there was a Hispanic music producer in the area. He wanted to know if there was someone who looked like him in the field he wanted to pursue. Studies show that students who are exposed to diverse educators are better prepared for life in a multicultural society. Diverse educators expose students to different perspectives and experiences, pushing them to consider the views of others. Preparing students to interact with a diverse society is increasingly important as our country becomes more diverse. Contact with more educators can help break down barriers and dispel stereotypes. In 2021, the Tennessee Educators of Color Alliance facilitated focus groups for educators of color in Hamilton County to identify opportunities for improvement. Participants expressed feeling racially isolated at their schools. They seldom experience PDs led by other educators of color. They appreciate the district's willingness to engage and address issues regarding equity, but they felt the lack of productive conversations about racism, and they rarely get the chance to connect with educators of color in their learning communities and across the district. The grant project activities focus 100% on supporting early career educators by establishing a comprehensive support system in their 1st through 5th years. Components of the project will include the establishment of social and affinity groups for early career educators to establish that sense of connection and boost their morale, mentoring by experienced educators to encourage the adoption of best practices, providing access to diverse professional development opportunities, including national conferences, and developing a very clear guidance for appropriately addressing relevant issues in class, including Tennessee's recently passed legislation that places limitations on classroom discussions of racism and its role in society. We are very excited about the development of this grant and the possibility of being awarded the funding. This will provide Hamilton County with a comprehensive professional support and career growth initiative plan for years to come. Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Jeanette Tolis. Let me reset the timer real quick for you. Okay, you can start.
So my name's Jeanette Toulis. I'm a mom of 4 adult children. I'm a private tutor, but most people who know me describe me as someone who loves books, especially children's books. I love books so much I have my own private lending library at my home in Soddy Daisy with thousands of books. Any family is welcome to visit and borrow books for free. I also manage a library for a local tutorial. One of my greatest joys is connecting children with really good books. I've seen over and over again how a good book can light a fire, how it can feed a mind with ideas, how it can expand one's view, how it can send the reader on an adventure. When a student loves to read, they are well on their way to becoming a self-directed learner. And that's the best kind of learner, for it is a lifetime learner. At last month's school board meeting, I heard 3 things which kind of troubled me, bothered me. The first was an idea that we should just be glad when our students are reading. It doesn't matter what they're reading, we just should be glad they're reading at all. And I think the application of that idea does a terrible disservice to our students. I'm a registered dietitian, but is it true that it doesn't matter what a patient eats when they're ill or even when they're well, as long as they're eating? It just isn't true. That's not true. And the human body feeds on ideas. The mind feeds on ideas the same way that a body feeds on food. So should we not offer students ideas which will truly nourish them? Why not ensure that the books we offer to students are full of ideas of courage, of doing the right thing even when it's hard, ideas of championing the little guy, being loyal to family and friends, being innovative, creative? Should we not make sure that the books in our school are inspiring? The second idea that kind of bothered me was that when you remove an offensive book from a school shelf, you're censoring books. But we're not making these books totally unavailable. Any parent can give their child any book they desire to give them. But as public educators, principals, librarians, I believe you're being entrusted with the responsibility. If a book is found on a school library shelf, it's assumed it has the approval, even the recommendation of the leaders of the school. And that's a serious trust that the parents are placing in the school. Exercising discernment as to what's good for a child's mind is not censoring. It's taking our duty as educators seriously. As parents, we put filters on our child's devices, on our home technology. We carefully choose video games and movies by looking at ratings for age appropriateness and content. Parents should be able to trust schools to do the same and not be working against them. The third idea which troubled me is that we should be choosing books that mirror the student's life experience. Thus, since they hear obscene language every day, it's fine, even good, for the books they read to contain that kind of language. But if the prevailing culture is sexually promiscuous, then their reading should reflect that as well. School libraries and classrooms should follow the culture. I'm sorry, but I beg to differ. To begin with, the books we read aloud in a previous board meeting featured main characters who are people of color. These books contained obscene language, inappropriate sexual situations. Are we saying that such scenarios are common to people of color, that all students need to experience that? That seems demeaning to me, especially to people of color. And even if these books mirror the minority experience in some way, wouldn't it be better to try to lift students up rather than sink to the level of the culture? Would it not benefit a student from a broken home to read stories of families who are intact, loving, and supportive? Would it not benefit students from dysfunctional families to read stories of families of all colors and backgrounds who overcame difficult situations with loyalty, with cooperation, and with respect for each other? A good book is not just one that tells your story. Rather, a good book can take you into other worlds, other times in history, into the lives of people who are not just like you. One of my favorite books for parents and teachers is Anthony Esselin's 10 Ways to Destroy the Imagination of Your Child. Of course, the title is written tongue-in-cheek. Several of these ways, however, are very instructive when choosing books. Number 5 is cast aspersions on the heroic and patriotic. Number 6 is cut all heroes down to size. Number 7, reduce all talk of love to just narcissism and sex. Number 8, level the distinctions between a man and a woman. Number 9, distract the child with the shallow and the unreal. Let us not do those things which destroy our students' imagination. I would like to challenge this board with an action point to get a real hold on how books are selected for the classroom and for the school library. We need a process in place.
Sorry, your time is up.
To review books.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jamie Hall. You may begin.
All right. Good evening, school board members, staff, and fellow attendees. It seems we've moved from bringing awareness of our different concerns in an effort to work together to bring a solution into allowing an open floor for name-calling, finger-pointing, people-shaming, and somehow an assumption of racial discrimination. I'm not sure how we arrived at this point, but let's get back to our concerns that have focused on foul language, explicit content, and extreme violence. Those are some of our major concerns that many parents and guardians have with the content of the books that have been in discussion. As parents and guardians, we are responsible to raise our children in the best way possible. This means we must have standards for the content of movies, music, literature, photos, etc., that we allow into our children's minds. We aren't naive to think they won't hear and see things we believe they shouldn't. We understand everyone's standards are very different. However, my job as a parent is to protect my children from certain content and to have open discussions with them when they have been exposed to something. It is also solely within my discretion to decide when is the best stage in life for each of my individual children to be introduced to different life lessons. It is not the school's job. It is not the teacher's job. It is not the librarian's job or even the children's peers' job to expose them to foul language, sexually explicit content, extreme violence, or anything else along those lines. These concerns are even acknowledged in the movie industry in the Parents Guide, where they rate the content based on the following categories: sex and nudity, violence and gore, profanity, alcohol, drugs, smoking, and frightening and intense scenes, because parents should choose what is acceptable or unacceptable for their children. Because parents are not generally with their children inside of the school, the classroom, or the library, it is very difficult for parents to guard their children from whatever content they find unacceptable, and it would add an extra burden upon teachers to have to play the guardian role for each individual child. Keep in mind that every single person is different and matures at different rates. So we couldn't just say all third graders are ready for certain questionable content and so forth. While I can agree with some of the comments from our last meeting that the storylines of some of these books can open eyes and hearts to those who have faced difficult circumstances in life, that our families should be aware and caring and loving. The strong language, sexually graphic content, and violence are unacceptable. There are other ways of teaching our children those life lessons, so I offer a solution. To this issue at hand, how can we handle these books? Since every Hamilton County student receives a public library card, why don't we create a section at the public library locations across the county for these books to be shelved? This way, the parents who desire for their children to read these books can freely check them out with their children at any time, and however often they prefer. And the parents who do not want their children exposed to this content will not have to worry about their children unknowingly checking out and reading these books. Please take this into consideration as we continue to move forward for the betterment of our children and this school system. As I close, I have to ask you, school board members, a question. Because you have each been elected to represent an entire district, which is an honor. Have you been conducting yourself with integrity while maintaining a high standard of conduct and ethics inside and outside of these meetings? I hope you can honestly answer yes, and that you're continually working to be better and do better. That is my goal as an individual, to strive to be and do better daily, to live my life in such a way that my testimony is strong and is good. I'm nowhere near perfect. I mess up. Y'all don't even know me. Is this allowed?
Crowd, please. She has the floor.
I mess up all the time, but I work towards making things right and even better. I hope you live your life similarly. You are in a leadership position. Thank you for your time.
Audrey Ramsey. Audrey Ramsey. Is there an Audrey Ramsey? Okay, thank you.
We have a speaker that has the floor.
You may begin.
Thank you. And good evening to our interim board superintendent, Dr. Davis, or I'm sorry, Dr. Towns, and to the members of the Hamilton County School Board. My name is Audrey Ramsey. I reside at 3131 Mountain Creek Road, and that's here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I stand before you as a representative of the Equity Alliance, a nonpartisan voter advocacy group. I stand before you as a voice for the voiceless in our underserved communities, and as a concerned citizen regarding the quality of education and equitable distributions of resources across the board, regardless of how many school board zoning areas are created. Now that the County Commission, which has jurisdiction over the public school board system, has adopted a resolution approving an 11-district map, which includes the city of Chattanooga, on the based on the census results, I would hope that the board members will employ a conscious leadership with a collective mindset of equality and not partisan politics. When it comes to the quality education with equitable distribution of resources across the board of all of our schools, only then can we ensure the holistic development of the child and operate in communities where the society is built to work for everyone. I recall being on the front lines of integration back in the 70s. Here in Chattanooga, I graduated from Brainerd High School back when we were the rebels. And a handful of black students at this predominantly white school at the time made it known that they were offended by the band wearing, of course, the Confederate soldier uniforms and playing Dixie every time a African-American and our first African-American quarterback and running backs for the team were scoring winning touchdowns. The administrators saw fit to put an end to this practice. Now times are different. After being away for almost 30 years and returning 3 years ago, from my perspective and my observations, Brainerd is now a predominantly black student body, and the students and their families are living in fear, lack, and separation. The time is now for a radically strategic 21st century plan that meets the needs of the students and their families in the communities where the high schools and feeder schools are located. And as you go through your zoning processes, these high schools and feeder schools should remain intact within the districts drawn up by the county's remapping process. We live in the 21st century, and the curriculum and instruction in Hamilton County is antiquated and definitively and definitely not progressive in Hamilton County. Not since 1956 and the ruling of Board versus Brown have we seen any attempt at policy making that sets the stage for equality in the free educational public school systems. If you are truly committed to the equitable distribution of resources to all schools, that would be no need for vouchers, charter schools, and the likes. Education and our environmental attitudes are the paradigm shift you must forge ahead in implementing an inclusive plan with urgency. If, and this is a big if our children are to achieve their highest potential and thrive in communities that are built with them, the students and the families, for them to live in a society that works for everyone. Let me just leave you with this quote from the author Richard Shaw. Education either functions as an instrument which is used to facilitate the integration of the younger generation into logic of the present system and bring about conformity to it, or it becomes the practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively. Keywords, critically and creatively with reality, and discover how to participate in the transformation of their world. Again, this is a new age. This paradigm trip is calling for conscious leadership. Can I have one more second? It's calling for leadership, compassion, empathy,
your time is up.
And equality.
Ma'am, your time is up. Ma'am, your time is up. Your time is up.
Alrighty, I'm pretty sure everybody else has 25 minutes. As a Christian, I do hope that you all have.
Ma'am, your time is up. Everyone gets 5 minutes.
Our next speaker is Reed. Thank you. Our next speaker is Reed Uberman. Is Reed here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you may begin.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you all for the work that you do here. I know it's a lot to listen to some of us drone on, but I'm going to be really direct and straight to the point. I'm a resident of Hamilton County in the East Brainerd area. I have 2 elementary school aged boys, 5 and 7. And my kids are my responsibility, and anything that threatens them has to go through me. So critical race theory certainly fits that bill, and anything that supports it. Its tenets, such as propaganda that espouses narratives that the police are systemically racist, or any literature that stokes resentment and hatred for this great, exceptional country. Specifically, the racial essentialistic lies CRT promotes gives children low self-esteem and a false identity of who they are based upon immutable characteristics. I am a father of 2 racially mixed boys. However, because they have light-colored skin, this racist vain ideology would most likely label them oppressors and inheritors of white privilege. So you can imagine, I'm alarmed when I see books that echo these ideas. But I want to be fair here. I've heard the excuses, and I'd like to address them so there's zero confusion. I've heard the claim, CRT doesn't exist. It's just a white supremacist thing that people say when they don't want history taught in schools. Unfortunately, I'm a historian. And I know the kind of history taught by critical race theorists like the laughable 1619 Project, which is nothing more than a pseudo-historical revisionist nonsense document that has been rejected by reputable scholars and historians all over the U.S. For its lack of facts, so ridiculous that the New York Times had to revise it. Some say, well, CRT is not taught in Hamilton County schools. There's no CRT classes in the whole district. Now there you are right, but also dishonest, because you and I know you require reading and allow books into your library like Ghost Boys and The Hate You Give that does nothing but confuse kids and stoke racial animosity just like CRT does. So no, there is no CRT classes to speak of. Instead, it slipped in through the back door. Some contend that CRT is just an analytical tool, but we know better. CRT is a worldview that comes with loaded presuppositions. They stoke racial animosity and is a rejection of biblical truths that founded this great nation. Some say, don't even talk about CRT, just say history. All we want is comprehensive history. There's not a single person in this room that doesn't know that American whites owned black slaves, or that some of our founding fathers owned slaves like Thomas Jefferson. We're teaching this kind of history in schools already, so it makes one wonder, what are we really after? One can't help but wonder why K through 12 kids know nothing about the single bloodiest century in human history, the 20th century, and most likely because it was perpetrated exclusively by the kind of communists that endorse CRT. You don't teach how Marxism is responsible for the death of some 30 million people at the hands of Stalin, 60 million by Maoist China, and the tens of millions more by Pol Pot and others. There is no whitewashing of history, but there is a redwashing of history. So when social justice organizations rise up steeped in Marxist ideology, you can expect parents like me to refuse to allow them to issue propaganda in our schools. I want to give you and others in the district the benefit of the doubt. I don't think any of you are Marxist. I'm not saying that. But I assure you, some of the authors of these books are. So I hope you are watching what happened in Virginia. I hope you see it as a reminder that this board has one job, and that is to serve the parents of this county, period. White and black people alike in every race in this city deep down knows this country gives us all the greatest chance of success than anywhere else in the world. Yet I don't see that being taught very often. And I'll just say this at the end of the day, our kids are our most precious resource. And you make mistakes, I make mistakes, I do things all the time where I realize I've got a great big learning curve ahead of me. And if that's true of us as adults, it's certainly true of kids, and we cannot be too careful what material we place in front of them. I believe that there are multiple books in the library and also in curriculum that violate Governor Lee's order. I've talked with the American Center for Law and Justice, and I believe we have standing to go further if we need to. But I would just humbly come before you guys and say, let's not go there. Let's not do that. Let's realize our kids are precious and be careful with what we allow them to have in their libraries and in their school classrooms. Thank you.
We'll move on to our board member disclaimer statement. We'll start with Ms. Rhonda Thurman.
What?
The board disclaimer statement.
Oh.
We're just going to go that way down the... dais.
Hello. I thought I'd done something wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. Probably won't be the last. Okay. I declare that I have relatives who work in the school system, and that the board's vote on the budget and policies may have an effect on my relatives' employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system, and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have relatives who work for the school system, and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have relatives who work for the school system, and that the board's vote on budgets, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system, and that the board's vote on budget, policies, etc. may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
All good on that. Okay, we'll move down to our approval of the consent agenda. Do I have anything that needs to be pulled? Motion to approve first.
So moved.
Second.
Now anything to pull. All good?
Hold on just a minute. I just can't remember. Yeah, the open enrollment. I want to pull that just to have a discussion about that, please.
Do you know the number on that?
It's 11A. 22. There you go.
Anything else? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. Ms. Thurman?
Yes, I'd just like some clarification since there's parents here and more people are probably watching us tonight than were watching us Monday night when we had some of this discussion. Explain about the open enrollment, when is the deadline, explain exactly what is going on here so parents will know where they can find the list of the schools that have openings in them and that sort of thing, if you don't mind, please.
Absolutely, happy to. Sorry about that. I am happy to. So the application opens on Monday, November 15th. It'll remain open through the end of January. Parents can select up to 5 options for the options listed, which will include magnet, open enrollment, future ready institutes. If we have more applicants than seats available in that program, then we'll run a lottery. So I'm trying to think of what other relevant details. If you're trying for an open enrollment seat, you have to be willing to provide your own transportation. The dates. I said November 15th it opens, January 31st it closes. Sorry. Anything else?
Is that, okay. Also, another quick question, and I'm not sure who can answer this. I've seen, and I'm not real sure how this works in magnet schools, do they give preferential treatment to alumni's children?
No, only current staff will get a preference. So if you work at that magnet, then you get a boost in your standing in the lottery.
It sure does seem funny that people who graduated from certain schools always manage to get their kids in. Just an observation here for the last 20 years. I just have a little bit, I just wonder about that. Because
no, alumni don't have any preference in the lottery. So, yeah.
How long have you been here? I've been here a long time.
Yeah.
It's hard to fool an old fool. But anyway, I just want everybody to be aware of what's going on with open enrollment. That if you want, what she's talking about, where can they find a list of the schools that have open enrollment?
It's all on our website. So if you just Google HCDE school choice, you'll see all of the available seats listed by school and grade.
Okay, so if you want your child, if there's an opening, you can apply for your child to go there. I just want everybody to understand that.
Ms. Jones.
At the bottom of said policy, though, it says the policy isn't applicable to begin until 2022-23, correct?
Right, so it will go into effect for next school year.
Okay.
So that's why this round of lottery is for seats for next school year.
Okay, I just want to make sure that,
Is everybody feeling?
Yeah, but do you
Okay,
want?
I'll just make a motion to add this back on the agenda for approval, please.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. That moves us down to board matters. The application for amendment to the charter agreement for Chattanooga Prep. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
Jenny. Oh, no. Whoever.
Donna.
Ms. Jones.
so I don't have I'm not in disagreement to approve the amended charter. I just have a question about, I guess it's probably more to the executive cabinet. What are we doing, or what are our plans to address the deficit in student population in our traditional schools that would normally service the students that are now attending the charter schools, in particular Chattanooga Prep and Chattanooga Charter School of Excellence? I know that we have two schools in particular, one that's in District 5 that has had a significant loss in enrollment due to the enhancement of grade levels at the charter schools. So once again, I mean, I get school choice, and that's fine, and those schools are doing great things. I'm just wondering, what are we going to do to support those communities, those schools in the community where students are not able to attend or get accepted into the charter system? I mean, I would hate to see schools begin to close, or we start, I mean, I will, and if that's the case, we have to address that because we want to be good stewards. But I'm just wondering, what is the plan, or if there's been discussion of a plan as to what we're going to do to address that loss.
So, Ms. Jones, my response would be that I think our whole choice program is that what we're really doing is elevating all of the good things that are happening in our schools. And I will tell you that at Delwood Middle, Mr. Williams, and at Orchard Knob Middle, Ms. Irvin, they are actively making sure that families are aware of all of the things that they're offering and what's happening inside of their schools and all of the programming that they're doing and all of the things that they're doing to support great learning outcomes in their schools. So our first and foremost is to make sure that families know what we have to offer and that we continue to provide robust programming. I think your broader point about facilities and utilization of buildings is one that will continue to be a conversation if we have buildings that are at 50% or below in utilization. So we are actively recruiting. We had a staff roundtable the other day at Delwood Middle, and this came up. There was a question that was directed to Chairman McClendon about zoning. And should we be doing something different about zoning that would impact those schools in particular? Delwood had some very specific concerns about how zone lines are drawn right now. So I think all of those things are in play. But first and foremost, we want families to know they can get a great education at Delwood Middle and Orchard Knob Middle.
Okay, and also to piggyback off of that, or to echo her sentiment, I do know, as it relates to Delwood, and this is historical, like for years, since back when I was in middle and in high school, there is a population of students and families that vote in District 5. They vote for constituents in District 5, but they get on a bus and go across the river to Hickson Middle School and Hickson High School. And I know initially when I first was elected to the board, and we had that discussion, Greg Martin was the District 3 representative at that time, and we were rezoning actually at that time. And we had some discussion about that, and I know there was a discussion about, was it fair to zone students who were not in a low-performing school or underperforming school to their zone school, trying to change that dynamic. I think that is something that we as a board should consider now that we know that Delwood and Orchard Knob Elementary and Middle and Brainerd are performing very well and with high expectations of coming off the priority list, just as Woodmore has, that we should, when we're looking at zoning after redistricting, that we think about what that looks like to bring that population of students back to their community school. What does that look like for them to come back to Dalewood, to come back to Brainerd? What does that look like in changing the trajectory, the socio-economic diversity in those buildings? What does that look like to bring those children back to their schools? Because most of them just go to school over there because they get on a bus. But they go to Brainerd High games, Dalewood games, they go into Brainerd Center, they're going to Tyner Center. I mean, they're doing things in their community because that is their community. The only thing they do outside of their community is go to school. So I think that is something that we need to look at when we're rezoning, because that will, I believe, change the culture and climate in those schools as well, and enhance what's already going on there.
We had our motion and second, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill? Yes. Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. That will move us down to the PECA Special Question Committee. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez? Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. That takes us down to the Legal Services Report, which you have in your agenda. And then we have some events and announcements. You have the dates for the TSBA convention, the Thanksgiving holiday for schools and central office. One note that next month's school board meeting and agenda session are 1 week earlier due to the holidays. So agenda session will be on December 6th, and the board meeting will be on December 9th. Two more announcements. We have done our board liaison positions. So we have Ms. Robinson with facilities, Ms. Thurman with student discipline and curriculum, Mr. Perez with human capital and personnel, Mr. Walker with policy, Ms. Jones with community engagement and equity, Mr. Smith with transportation, Mr. Wingate with finance, and Ms. Hill with our class representation. Also, to continue on our conversation of Monday night for our superintendent search, we have dates for when those candidates will be in town. We'll be putting more information out on our website under the superintendent search tab on there. Dr. Jim McIntyre will be in town next week, November 16th and 17th. Dr. Christopher Bernier will be in town November 29th and November 30th. Dr. Jermaine Dawson will be in town December 1st and December 2nd, and then Dr. Justin Robertson will be in town or here December 6th and December 7th. Any other events or announcements?
What about, when are we going to publish the graduation schedule?
Tomorrow.
Okay, so we don't vote on that, right? I mean,
No,
it's
ma'am. I
it's
just gave
okay.
it to you as a courtesy
Okay.
because somebody messed it up last year and just wanted to make sure that it was right. But we'll put it on the website and send it out tomorrow.
Okay, I just wanted to know, I've been asked about it, and I just didn't know if it was official when it would be published. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I have a quick question for the, probably maybe for you, Jen, if you're still leading the task force. I've had a number of questions from parents regarding their their younger student receiving the vaccine. And the question is, if a student has been vaccinated, do they have to quarantine if they're exposed? Or is there a different rule for younger students versus the older students, and then what the guideline is for adults? I didn't know if something's been put
To
out.
my knowledge, it's once you're fully vaccinated, you're 2 weeks out from your second dose, then you would be following the same guidelines as our staff, which is that you would no longer need to quarantine if you're considered close contact.
Okay.
I thought that we weren't allowed to quarantine. Am I wrong?
Well, that is, I mean, yeah, that's a whole another thing, but I don't know, has that gone into effect?
Hasn't signed it. Mr.
So,
Bennett.
to my knowledge, the governor hasn't signed that yet.
He
But
hasn't.
even, but we know he's going to. We also know that the Department of Health is trying to fast track some regulations to pass this down so that the boards can keep doing what they've been doing. Within that gap, what we're telling people to do, well, I should speak for Ms. Bronson, but my understanding is we're going to tell them this is what has been advised and strongly encouraged, establishing our expectations.
Right, so basically if the local health department establishes,
No,
No.
by statute, the General Assembly has now required the Commissioner of Education to establish through formal rulemaking authority when someone is or isn't in quarantine. And so what we anticipate is that the Department of Health will make a determination about whether school boards can continue doing basically what they've been doing now for 20 months.
So they're still quarantined, like we've been quarantining. Some of these kids have missed 40 days of school. I mean, it is getting to the point that it is, if we're worried about the whole child, we need to deal with this.
Well, and
if we don't have to do it, I don't know why we continue to do it.
well, and literally, this is something we have no control over. So,
Well, it sounds like we do. That's what I'm asking.
well, and we don't. So, and that's been the frustration here because if you go back to before the COVID bill, we were getting guidance from the Department of Education, which has total control over the administration of the education program in Tennessee. And so the Department of Education was saying, this is what you have to do. And so, we saluted smartly and carried out their instructions. The General Assembly has said now the only authority that can quarantine is the Commissioner for the Department of Health, which is why the local health department has been completely removed from the equation, unless the Commissioner of Health decides to put them back into the equation. And likewise, unless the Department of Health decides to put us back into the equation. So literally the only thing that we have any latitude to do is, well, it's really not latitude. It's to follow the instructions that were given by the people who are in charge. That's it.
Who's in charge? I mean,
Well,
if
so
they haven't put us back into the equation,
right.
and
So
then we're not in the equation. So
right now, no one has any authority right now to issue any kind of quarantine. So think about that. Literally, no one right now has any authority to issue a quarantine. Not sure that was necessarily intended, but that's the practical effect. If the Department of Health passes through its rulemaking authority regulations that establish how COVID quarantine could be applied in schools, then we would follow those regulations to the extent that we play any role. And it may very well be that those regulations don't have any role for us to play. It may very well be that the commissioner says, no, all of the local health departments will handle this. Right now, I'm in the dark to tell you what might happen because there are an infinite number of possibilities. I'd have to guess. But what I'm hearing you say, Ms. Thurman, is, it's frustrating and you'd like some clarity. I agree with you. I despise.
Parents would like some clarity because some of these parents are tired
Sure.
of their kids being out of school 40 days, and I don't blame them.
I can't give the board or the administration clear advice when the law isn't clear. So the best that I can do is to tell Ms. Bronson and her team, we understand that your child is a close contact. Here are the rules that we have followed to this point. And then I guess the rest of that message is this is the expectation, but there's no enforcement, if you will.
Okay, another question. Children who have had the virus, as my grandchildren have, do they get treated differently? I mean, why would kids who have the vaccine get treated better, for the lack of a better word, differently, thank you, than others, when really they probably have more antibodies than someone who's gotten the vaccine? So will they still have to continue to be quarantined?
Anybody that has confirmed positive in the last 90 days does not need to quarantine if
Last
they're
90 days?
In the last 90 days, yeah. That's per the Tennessee Department of Health's guidelines.
That's correct. The Department of Health guidelines, I realize there are a lot of folks who have taken issue with the Department of Health guidelines, but we can't ignore those guidelines.
Oh, I'm not saying to ignore them. I'm just saying that Sometimes the vaccine doesn't last any longer than that either, obviously.
Well,
And people that have had the vaccine can still spread the COVID, so I'm
You're
just,
exactly
I'm
right.
just,
And
I'm just
that's-
at a loss about why we continue to dance around this. I don't
Well, so it boils down to, we've said this before, we're kind of building an airplane in mid-flight. And I think we've done a pretty good job, all things considered. I mean, after all, Hamilton County Schools did stay open more than any other district in the state of Tennessee, and managed to have some pretty good academic gains.
Scott, you know what it means to do excessive celebration in the end zone. We've done this. We've played this out. We've done this. It's over. We pat ourselves on the
That's
back.
right.
We did a good job. It's
So-
time for
so-
us to move on.
So all we can do is in the moment make the best decisions that we can. We've followed the guidelines. Those guidelines haven't been updated. That's the problem. And I understand exactly what you're saying. We did it. We're in a different chapter right now. But the rules haven't changed for us.
So when the governor signs it, that's when the rules will change.
Well, when the governor signs it, no one will have the authority to issue a COVID quarantine until the Department of Health adopts new guidelines. And what those are going to be, I can't tell you. I could tell you if I knew, but I simply don't know.
So if it takes a couple of months for them to make that decision, then for a couple of months nobody can quarantine. Is that where we are?
That's correct.
Okay, with that, nothing else on the agenda, we will adjourn.